beautiful music, and we will hear more of that later on in the show. That's called I'm Old Fashioned off of the EP Songs for a Rainy Day, available on SoundCloud by Enzo De Palma. He's pretty terrific. I think we're going to be hearing a lot more from him. So thanks a lot, Enzo, for sending that. And let's remember to play that, too, later on in the day. We have a great show for you today. In studio with me is Norm Aladjem. Right? Did I say
Aladjem,
that right?
yeah.
Aladjem,
Perfect.
I got it. Thank you so much for being here. Personal manager and producer. You are CEO of Mainstay Entertainment. My next guest on my next show, and he saw you over at Starbucks next door, said, "Wow, is that your first guest?" He's like, "He's a big deal in the business." And I'm like, "Yeah, only here."
That's because he's a big deal. That's why he knows.
That's right. Only here on Deborah Kobylt Live. So everybody, thanks for joining us. And you're here today to talk about all kinds of things, but in particular, this book.
Yes.
From Me to You. Stories about life, love, family, faith, and how to negotiate a bigger allowance. This is a fantastic, fantastic book.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I start with the dedication? Because I love this.
Please, anything.
This speaks to so many of us. For my sister Vivian, who always told me I had a gift for writing, and for my 11th grade English teacher, who always told me that I didn't. Isn't that the truth?
It is.
I mean, how many of us were told you can't write, and then you end up a writer? Friend of mine, Adam Levine, okay, when he was in school, they said, I think they gave him a C or a D in music. Hello.
I actually have a chapter very specific about one of my high school teachers who told me college wasn't for everyone and maybe I could be a plumber.
Isn't that true? My husband is in radio. He's a pretty well-known radio guy.
Yes.
And the first thing they said about him, your voice is terrible. Don't even bother. So I have an idea for all of you out there who are trying to make it something. If somebody tells you you can't,
do it.
Guaranteed, not only do it, you're going to make it, right?
Yep.
So here we go. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
But we had a terrific, I love to pre-interview my guests, and you and I just really connected over this book. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic. I'm going to let you take it away a little bit and tell us, what is this about? What is From Me to You about? And also, why did you write it?
From Me to You is a series of 52 letters that I wrote to my youngest daughter, who at the time was 10 or 11 years old.
Mackenzie.
And the reason that I did it was, by the time Mackenzie was born, I was already a bit of an older dad.
45.
I was 45.
Oof, over the hill.
I was gone. And, what you realize is that life is not given. You don't know what's going to happen. And my daughter was too young to have the capacity or the interest to really hear the life stories that I wanted to tell her about life, love, family, whatever. So I decided I was going to write her a letter a week for a year and tell her anything and everything that came to my mind. And so what happened was I wrote the first letter, and then when it was time to write the second letter, I had nothing to say. I didn't know what to do. I had complete writer's block. So I decided that to hold myself accountable, what I would do is I posted the letter on Facebook, and I said to my Facebook friends, I'm going to be writing one of these every week for a year. Please tune in, because I thought I don't want to be embarrassed and not have one.
That's very brave, I have to tell you, because it's very personal, right?
Yes.
So I don't know if I would have the guts to do that, because these are beautiful stories, and I've
Thank you.
outlined quite a few of them.
Thank you.
And I went through all 52 of your chapters as well. By the way, this is a very easy read. It's
Yes.
an inspiring book, and I'll explain from my point of view later why. But it's easy to read. Sometimes when you put something down, you think, oh, it's too much. But you could pick it up again later and read it. Gives you all kinds of ideas about how, I think about my own kids. I have 3 sons. I've always wanted to do something similar. So this has really got me thinking about that.
Well, one of the things that's been very fulfilling to me about this book is the people who have read it, who don't have kids, have said to me, oh, I wish my dad had written something like this for me. And then people like us who have kids, they've all said to me, oh my God, I should start writing to my kids. So it just made me feel like I had struck some kind of a chord.
Even if you're not a writer and you're not someone who asks questions for a living, it's always good to leave something behind. My father had so many stories. I know some, but most I don't. And I'm regretful, actually, that I didn't ask more questions. Don't put it off, and you didn't. You're, the ripe old age of... When did you start writing it? When you were...
When I was...
She was 11.
So I was about 55.
So you were really over the hill then.
I was gone. I was gone.
Forget about it. So you were... but okay.
I'm getting younger now.
There's no doubt.
Yes.
On this show, you'll get younger.
Yes,
we go
thank you.
backwards here.
Thank you.
So you started with what? I mean, I love also the sort of the chronology of this whole thing. Did you just talk about whatever came to mind, or?
I for the most part, I did. I had some ideas of things I wanted to write. I wanted to give her a little bit of our family lore. I wanted to talk about how I met her mother.
But I love that you have the Mackenzie years, pre
Yes.
and post kid. Isn't
Yes.
it true that like you define yourself from, pre kid and post kid? It's almost like you don't remember yourself pre kid.
Well, it is. And among other things,
It is true.
As a parent, you want to be around to see how it all turns out. That's why I call it Mackenzie years, right? If I live to be this age, she'll be that old. If I live to that age, she'll be this old. And I'll get to see high school or college or wedding or whatever that may be.
Yeah.
So I wanted to leave that for her, and I wanted to give her, whatever wisdom of the years that I had from my hardscrabble life.
I love the chapter of how you met your wife, Laura.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible. If fate didn't play a part there, right? I mean, do you want to briefly tell us about that?
Sure. The chapter is called How I Met Your Mother, and it's literally the story of how my wife Laura and I got together. Laura was the it girl in high school.
And she still is. Her picture, she's
And
gorgeous.
she's a beautiful woman. She was this blonde, green-eyed. She was the captain of the cheerleader. She dated the captain of the hockey team. She was that girl.
And what were you? Were you like looking at her from the other side of
Yes,
the high school
yes,
field, going, I don't know.
I
Yeah.
was not the it anything, and so she did not know who I was. And then we were reintroduced about 20 years or so later, and got together. So that chapter is the story of how fate lent a hand to get us together.
That's incredible, because you had a mutual friend, and she
Yes.
came out here to Los Angeles because she was living in Pennsylvania, correct?
Yes, correct.
So I know your whole life
Yes,
story.
I love it.
Yeah, well, I told you I was going to read it. Thank you for dropping it off, too.
Thank
at
you
my
for reading
home.
it.
Yeah. And through a mutual friend, she was out here visiting, and didn't quite get together that time. It didn't work. Yet she called you because she remembered when she was available and free. And then you got together then, and the rest is history. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And she has 2 children from a previous marriage, correct?
She does. I have 2 stepdaughters with whom I'm very close, actually. I
Yeah, it's
love
beautiful.
them to death, yeah.
That's really, really nice. Maybe next book would be to your stepchildren.
Maybe. I'm not sure I have any more lessons to teach anyone. But, if you read the book, you know that some of the chapters are for and about them and profess my love for them as well. The book
Yeah.
is really, the letters are to Mackenzie, but it's really for it's a love letter to my family. It's really what it is.
You're a guy in the cutthroat business of entertainment. You're an entertainment executive. This is a little bit rare to see a
Yes.
side like this, right? I mean, you're a
Well-
sensitive guy. I mean, I'm telling you, you've got to pick this up and read it. Available on Amazon, by the way. It came out just this month, right?
It came out last week.
Yeah, last week. So hot off the press. It's fantastic. And it's just a rare glimpse into someone who feels things so deeply and wants to share their thoughts.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because one of the chapters, which is called The Wisdom of Mike Tyson, and
That was a good one, yeah.
I talk about bullying, and I talk about my own self-respect. And one of the things that I say in that chapter, which I mean, to your point, right? I'm a reasonably affable, easygoing guy. I don't think you need to be a bad person to succeed. But I also will say that the people who have confused my affable nature for weakness have regretted that.
Boy, isn't that the truth? Let me tell you, something just recently happened to me even this week. And I was asked to do something for someone, and I agreed, and then they backed out. And I thought, sometimes I think I'm too nice, and I'll agree to help people out a little bit, and then, I don't know, I might get, I don't want to be the doormat. So you have to walk that line in this business, right? You have to, hold your guard.
Well, you do. And as a representative, your next guest will tell you, as a representative, you have to be a warrior on behalf of your clients, and that's the job. The job isn't to be liked. The job is to be a warrior on behalf of your clients, but you can't lose your humanity in the process.
Right. Well, that's when you put on the warrior hat, right? So you're sitting
Yeah.
in your office.
Yeah.
You've got the nice Norm hat, who, the writer of the book to his kid, and then you put on the other hat, the warrior hat. Let's talk about some
I
of
call
the
it,
chapters.
just so you know, I say to clients all the time, if I need to put my black hat on, I will.
Yeah, the black
Yeah.
hat. There you go, the witch hat. So how did you come up with these chapters? That's what I was wondering. Everything from the fragility of life to peer pressure to faith and religion. Like, how did you know to even categorize it like this? Because it's almost like everything I would tell my kid, you did it in 52 weeks. Right?
Well, look, some of the topics I had in my head that I wanted to write. I wanted to give her my thoughts on faith and religion, to your point, or
Yeah.
peer pressure or whatever. And then some things, just as I was writing, something was going on either in her life or my life or the world that made me want to write about it at that time.
Let's talk
Right.
about when she was born. What's her birthday?
Well, she was born on 9/11, 2001, about an hour before the planes hit the towers. So, as I like to say, one of the darkest days of our history is also one of the happiest days of my life.
That's really incredible. What was that like?
Oh, it
As
was
you
madness.
just had your daughter, and you were euphoric, and I don't know, people were probably just running around going, "You won't believe this." I mean, what was that like that day?
Well, I remember it very vividly because she had just been born, and as the dad, they took me and Mackenzie to whatever room is where they clean up the babies
Yeah,
and
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
And so there's a few parents there with their kids, and the moms are going off to their rooms. And all of a sudden, the nurses and doctors, whoever was in that room, everybody's sort of buzzing, and they all left. And all of us parents were there, what just happened? What just happened?
Really, what's going on?
Yeah.
Was it me? Is it my kid? Yeah.
Yeah. So it was really quite something, and she was born at Cedars-Sinai here in L.A., and I mean the hospital was locked down like a
I'm sure it
a
was.
fortress, So, but it
Wow.
was one of those things because the company I was running at the time had both L.A. and New York offices. We were in L.A., so the calls that I was making that day were very peculiar. So I would call my father and say, "Oh my gosh, we had a daughter. Her name is Mackenzie. We're so excited." And then I would hang up and call one of my colleagues in New York and say, "Is everyone in your family accounted for? Is everybody okay? Where are you? What can we do to help?" And so I was literally, for the better part of a day, making two sets of calls that could not have been more disparate.
Boy, what a way to come into the world,
Yeah,
Mackenzie.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, she hurtled in. She hurtled in for sure.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about friendship.
Yeah.
You give her words of wisdom on friendship. Tell us about that.
Well, that's a bittersweet chapter because it's a chapter about my very best friend in life who I met my first week in college and who had recently died.
Yeah.
And so I talked to her about friendship, and at the same time, I was eulogizing my best friend. And that was one of the interesting things, too, about writing this book. I felt like I said, people say to me, when did you set out to become an author? I did not set out to become an author. I set out to write letters to my daughter. And I wanted to make a difference in her life. I wanted to leave something of myself for her and her future family. What I found was that the writing of this book was beyond fulfilling for me, beyond cathartic for me. One of the letters that I write is called The Miracle of Aunt Viv, which I was writing literally
Your sister.
as my sister lay dying.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to, again, give my daughter some words about my sister, and at the same time working out the fact that she was dying in my own heart and my own head.
Right, because your daughter was young, and you were
Yes.
concerned, because I read that chapter as
Yeah.
well. You were concerned that she wouldn't remember, and you wanted to
Correct.
make sure that she remembered
Correct.
Aunt Viv. That was a beautiful chapter, and I could
Correct.
see you tearing up now because
Oh my gosh,
And
you have no
it's
idea. It's actually funny, and a shameless plug, but as part of the
No
Audible,
shameless plugs
as part
here.
of the Audible deal, I got the opportunity to actually read the letters. So if you go on Audible to buy my book, you'll actually hear me reading the stories.
Oh, really?
And when I got, and it was such an amazing, amazing experience, because when you think about in 50, 60 years, when I'm probably long gone, she'll be able to hear my voice when I was still reasonably vibrant, telling her about our family and how much I love her and all that stuff. I mean, beyond fulfilling.
that's an idea too.
Yeah.
You don't even have to write it down for your
Yeah.
kid. Use your
Yeah.
voice
Yeah.
or whatever. That's smart.
But
too.
yes, I agree. But what I was going to say is when I went into the recording booth, I said to the sound engineer, I said, "Look, I know you haven't read the book. I just need to apologize in advance because 8 or 10 times while I'm reading this, I'm going to start bawling like a baby. So apologies in advance."
Oh, I'm sure.
And
you
I did.
loved it.
And I did. Yeah.
Oh, did you keep that in? I mean,
No.
I didn't hear the audio version, but that would be interesting.
Yeah.
I guess you can't because the person
Yeah,
listening
you
on the
really-
other
you really
end would be
can't.
like, "What?" You know.
You really can't.
Yeah.
You really can't. But it was, again, beyond cathartic for me, beyond fulfilling, a wonderful experience.
You talk about. I like this one too. Art in the world, words of wisdom. That's a really good one too. Tell us why you wrote about art in the world.
Well, I was an agent for many years before I became a manager and producer, and I always used to talk about the nobility of being a talent agent. And people
tell
would
me about that.
Well, people would laugh because
That
they
seems
would
like an
say-
oxymoron.
Exactly.
Right? Am I
People
right?
would say to me, "What do you mean by nobility and agent in the same sentence?"
Wait a minute.
But my view of the world was and is this, and it goes a little bit to this chapter, right?
Yeah.
Somebody like Blake, who you're going to interview next, right?
That's Blake Boyd.
Yes.
He's an actor.
Shameless plug for Blake Boyd. He has an innate immortality through his work. He has an ability to act or write or direct. Those are not my gifts, right? My gift is I have a passion for art and the artists, and I have a bit of the gift of gab. So I was.
And you're a business guy. I mean, you really do have left and right brain going on.
I
there.
do. I have a little bit of each. And what I notice is that artists, they look at their creative vision, they have a creative vision, and they go and they go and they go. From a business perspective, you're not always doing straightforward. How do I get over the wall, under the wall, around the wall? And so for me, to be able to work with an artist and help them fulfill their creative vision in a way that they may not otherwise have been able to do without me, I think there's nobility in that. I do, and that's what I've always said. So that, the chapter I'm sorry, go.
No, go.
Well, I was just saying that the chapter that you're talking about is sometimes in the day-to-day grind you forget about the beauty of art. You forget about how important it is to get music in the world and stories in the world and film in the world. And so what happened, one of my dear, dear friends is a woman named Tina Schaefer, who's a very successful singer-songwriter, and she runs a thing in New York called the Songwriter Circle at the Bitter End. And so I was in New York once.
The Bitter End. Love the Bitter End.
Oh, my
It's
gosh.
a theater in New York.
Yeah. And so I went to meet her one night for dinner, but she was doing the Songwriter Circle that she does. And I was just so taken by watching these artists in an intimate environment performing their songs for each other without regard to, is this making money? It's just artists in the world. And so that drove me to write that letter.
Yeah, and you also have some, what do we call them, words of wisdom, phrases of wisdom in that particular chapter as well, right?
I like to think I have words of wisdom in every chapter. I don't know if that's necessarily true.
No, but it's almost like a list, if you will, everything from...
Well, no, but that's, in all fairness, that's a song that Tina Schaefer and Phoebe Snow wrote, and Tina happened to sing it that night.
How brilliant this is, isn't it?
What's that?
How brilliant this song is.
Oh, it's beyond.
But the way that you phrased it and the way that you put it in the book...
No, thank you.
Thank you.
But they're not my words.
Yeah.
Those are Tina and Phoebe's words.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
But they really did seem to thematically encapsulate what I was thinking about art and the immortality of artists.
I love this. Find peace in the craziness of each day. I won't always be there to guide you. Oof. That brought a tear to my eye because I lost both my parents in recent years. And it doesn't matter how old you are. You could be a kid or you could be somebody, I always like to say over 40. It still hurts. It
does.
And I always feel like I'm orphaned.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Of course.
Like and I go through hard times. I'm like, wait a minute. I don't have anybody to call.
Yes.
I mean, sure, a friend, but you know what I mean.
No, I agree
When
completely.
your parent is gone, your parent is gone. In the words of Harrison Ford, whom I happen to know, I remember when my mom died, he came to the house and he was very, very, very kind. And he said, Deborah, the day my mom died, I always felt orphaned. And I thought, he's right.
I think
So
he
I get
is.
that. So it's wonderful
think
that
he
you said
is.
that. However, another thing.
And by the way, one other thing, Mackenzie, my youngest daughter, who is the inspiration for this book, is also an artist herself. She's been an actress since she was 5-6 years old.
Beautiful girl.
Successful. And so I wanted to guide her to the extent that she continues doing art in the world.
I love that. You're a winner. Don't kill me for saying that. Why did you do that? Because kids don't want to hear that, right? They're like, stop, Dad. Is that what you meant by that?
Yes, and also the beginning of, I forgot the name of that chapter, but the chapter begins, and what triggered me to write that particular chapter is I had read a story about a young teenage girl who had killed her father. And it started me thinking, as a father myself, what would happen to make a young woman think that her only form of self-defense was to become a killer? And so I start the chapter that way. So in the end, I was doing a bit of a double entendre.
Yes, you
Number
were.
one, because I'm annoying as could be, and number two, I was bringing you back
Aren't all
full
parents
circle.
annoying?
Yes,
Right? And then
yes.
you tell them something nice, and they're like, stop it. And you're like, ugh. So,
The good news is, because I have two older daughters,
Yeah.
when they hit a certain age, they come back around, and I get smarter,
yeah.
I get a little less annoying.
my boys are coming back around, and suddenly I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
They say I ask too many questions. I'm like, oh, come on. Please. I grew up just asking questions just because my whole life was one big why. So I
Yeah.
grew up with one big
Yeah.
why. So, but yes, they're coming around to understand it,
Yes,
right? We're
yes.
suddenly cool.
Cooler.
Cooler.
I don't know that we're actually cool per se.
I don't even think they use that word. So maybe
Yeah,
that's
fair enough. Fair enough.
maybe that's it. Let's go back to Mike Tyson because I like
Yes.
what you talked about with bullying. That was a good chapter. Tell me a little bit about
Well, we are immigrants to this country. We came to this country when I was 8 years old.
Right.
And
And you grew up in...
I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. And in addition to being an immigrant, I was also pint size. And so the kids would pick on me because I didn't speak English and I was short and whatever.
Isn't there always something? If you're not good at athletics, you get picked on. If you're a short kid, you get picked on.
Yes.
And you were that short kid across the field looking at Laura.
Yes,
going,
I was.
Someday. Right?
I was. And then when I think I was in 7th or 8th grade, and I would like to find her. I had a mad crush on this woman named Brenda Nance. She was a girl at the time.
Wait, what's her last name?
Her name is Brenda Nance.
Brenda Nance.
Get it out there. I want to find her.
We're going to find Brenda Nance. Oh, I'm very good at finding people.
Oh, please find Brenda Nance. I would love to show her this chapter because she changed my life.
Brenda,
come
sweetie,
back
we're
to
going
us.
looking for you.
Come back
Okay,
to us.
Brenda, we could find her, I'm sure.
But
so.
she changed
In
my
Cleveland?
life. No, she's in Augusta, Georgia, or she was back in the day. I have no idea where she is these days.
Okay.
But I was being bullied in 7th or 8th grade, and I had a crush on Brenda, and some kid was trying to bully me, and I saw her, and I didn't want to look like a wimp, so I told the kid to meet me after school. And we ended up having a fight after school, which, I got beat up pretty badly, but I also got some real self-worth and self-respect out of it. But the reason the chapter is called The Wisdom of Mike Tyson is, Mike Tyson is not necessarily the most quotable guy in the world, but he does have a quote that I love.
Okay.
And the quote is, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Mm-hmm. Now, Mike Tyson was talking strictly as a boxer, but it has universal applicability. And so that's
very interesting.
So that's a chapter about bullying and self-respect.
Gosh, can we clone you? I mean, seriously, I love the way you think.
Oh, thank
okay,
you.
so you're a big-time entertainment executive in Beverly Hills, and you've got some pretty big clients. How do you navigate your day each day? And it is a pretty cutthroat, difficult business. I'm going to guess, okay, that you just do it head on, and however you feel is what you tell people. You don't lead them on, right? You're probably one of those guys.
I am. Look, I grew up, to your point earlier, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm a Midwestern kid. I'm a straightforward guy.
And an immigrant,
I'm an immigrant. That's if you think about the personality of a Midwestern kid who's an immigrant, that really is
From
me.
where?
Uruguay, Montevideo, Uruguay. Yeah, so we're South Americans. And but I'm pretty straight ahead. I think the clients I represent appreciate that about me. They appreciate that I'll go to war for them. They'll appreciate that I'll go to peace for them. And that I'm trying to rise them in the world.
How has this book changed you since writing it?
That is a fantastic question.
Thank you.
I don't know that I have a pithy answer to it. I think it has changed me in a few ways. The first thing I will say is this. I'm a big advocate of telling the people you love how much you love them, right? And again, immigrant, last generation.
We talked about that.
We talked about it.
It never happened at home. It'd be like,
Correct.
just go clean your room, be quiet. It's like, well, go. They didn't do that because my parents is very similar.
Yes.
Upbringing, somewhat. They didn't do that then. Am I right? How about in your?
Yeah.
When you grew
Look,
up?
I don't think my father, as he got older, started saying "I love you," but I was well into my adulthood before he ever said that. I think it's when Mackenzie was born that it weirdly triggered it for him. But one of the ways that I think this changed me is it reminded me of a few things. It reminded me to tell the people I love how much I love them. It reminded me to savor the people I love. Because again, like in business, in the everyday grind, my daughter's annoying me, or I'm annoying my wife, or whatever annoyances that we have can sometimes make us forget how blessed we are and the abundance that most of us have. And I think this book really put a fine print on that for me.
But before the book, are you a guy who's just an eternal optimist?
Yes.
Because so even as a kid, you were, even when you were getting beat up by that kid at school, you're always the eternal optimist. Because I study people, and I study older people, young kids, and I wonder, I think no matter what happens to you, if you're resilient, and I actually think you're born with that attitude. All these whatever's going on out there where they're trying to say, oh, how to have a better attitude, how to do this. Sometimes I think you're just born the way you are. You were probably born an eternal optimist.
Well, look, I know nothing of brain chemistry or any of those things. I can speak for myself and say that I am optimistic. I'm a happy person. I've been blessed in my life. And I also realize, and one of the chapters talks about that, I also realize that failure is an event. It's not a state of being. I realize...
Yeah, chapter 10, you talk about failure, actually.
I talk about the importance of failure, right? And again, as an immigrant kid growing up, everyone drilled into me the importance of success, which I understand.
Boy, if that's not true, that makes you paranoid. It's like, oh my God, if you don't hit it by a certain stage. And success for them, at least in my family, was making money.
Yeah, no, well, it was the American dream.
Yeah.
Immigrants, the American dream.
Yeah.
But what I realize, and by the way, I'm not suggesting, because the chapter is actually entitled The Importance of Failure, I'm not at all suggesting that people start planning to fail or hoping to fail or any of those things. In fact, and I say this in the book, I hope they will have the same visceral antipathy towards failure that I have. But what I've learned in my life, and the secret of my success, has been I am constantly willing to risk failure because I know that's the price of success.
Yeah, and we all have failure, and it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
And fear is the worst, because if you're fearing the failure and you're trying to, you can't steer away from it, right?
No,
You just
no.
can't.
And especially if you're an artist or if you're an entrepreneurial person, which I am, you're going to have very high highs, you're going to have very low lows. There's just no way around it. You just have to embrace it, learn from the failures, and savor the successes. And that's what I hope my kids will get from me, if nothing else.
So Mackenzie is now 17. What's she saying about the book and her friends?
Mackenzie is too cool for school at 17, so I'm not 100% sure, but I will tell you that she seems really tickled.
Really?
That I wrote a book for and about her. You know, because she's an actress, she actually has a real social media presence. She's Instagrammed
have her
about
on.
it and
I should have
tweeted
had her
about
on
it.
with you, yeah.
Yes, you should have. You
Yeah.
absolutely should. She would have loved that, I'm sure. But I think she kind of digs it. But, you know, she's in 12th grade. Boys, cheerleading, dance. Yeah. Those are more important right now.
Well, Norm, I've really enjoyed having you on. I just think this is great. I really am encouraging everyone, please. But is there anything else you want to tackle that we kind of didn't really bring up? Because there's just so much really that there is to talk about.
Well, look, I leave that to you. I would say that there are...
I love the meaning of life, too, how you sum this up to her. Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say there are different themes that I talk about. Some of the letters are sadder and will make you cry. Some are a little more humorous, will make you laugh. You know, one of the chapters that I love is called "The Birds and the Bees," and the reason I love it is it's about a father telling his daughter.
Wait, where is that? That was
about
funny.
the facts of life.
That was funny. I love that. I don't know if I footnoted it, but why don't you explain it to us?
Well, it's every father dreads having to have the birds and the bees conversation with his daughter because it's embarrassing and awkward, really to both of you, but certainly to me. And what I think I was actually able to capture in that chapter was, in a humorous way, the awkwardness and embarrassment of it, while at the same time giving her the actual talk, if you will. And I think, look, one of the other things that we still do live in a very patriarchal, misogynistic society, and I don't want my daughter to fall prey to that. Mm-hmm. I want to believe she can be everything and anything that she can be, both in terms of her personal life and professional life and her love life. And
clearly, you've done
all
this.
That.
I mean, really. And, it's so important for a father to impart that on his daughter. You were saying you gave her the talk. God knows I didn't get the talk. I didn't get it from my mom or my dad. I got it pretty much from myself and the boyfriend you got, or had. And so I think that's great that you weren't even a little embarrassed, if you will, to sit down and talk with her. I think that's fantastic because it raises
was embarrassed,
the bar.
but I did it anyway.
See, did you hear that? You felt funny, but you're raising the bar for any man that's going to walk into her life.
I hope so. I hope so.
But I just also want to mention even something like building a furry family. I mean, even about animals, you really just sort of take on everything in life and in family life. I love that.
Thank you. Well, one of the chapters, Building a Furry Family, is a fun chapter about all our dogs.
Yeah.
But there's also, I can't remember the title of the chapter right now, where I talk about I'm playing God. I think it's called I'm Playing God or something like that, where I talk about the deaths of a couple of our animals. And I will tell you, when I was writing it, in fact,
that was very heart-wrenching to read.
Oh, my
because
God.
those of us who have pets, we've all been through that. That's very, very difficult.
And sometimes while I was writing the letters just to get away, I would go and sit at a Starbucks or a Coffee Bean or something just with my computer and write. And when I was writing that chapter, I remember very vividly, I was sitting in some coffee shop typing on my computer and bawling my eyes out. And I can only imagine what people there were thinking. But even now, having written it and now having read it 100 times, I cannot read that chapter without being moved.
They are our family. And for people who don't have pets, I think they don't understand. They don't get it. But I think every family needs a pet. That was a beautiful, beautiful chapter. And it also just gave us a window into how your soul looks at things, which is very compassionate and loving. I really, really enjoyed having you on, honestly.
No, thank you.
I could talk to you for an hour.
Please
I really could.
What a fun time.
Yeah, but please pick this up. Available on Amazon. Are you doing any book tours or anything? Because you should, other than here, which is...
Yeah, we've been talking about that, and the publishers are structuring it. We'll see.
I mean, I
what
know it's
happens
hard
there.
now, right? There's hardly... But you've got the Amazon bookstores out there now, and Barnes & Noble is still,
Yeah, Barnes & Noble. I mean, obviously you can get it at your local bookstore. In fact, the other day I was actually driving past the Barnes & Noble on Ventura Boulevard in Studio City, and I couldn't help myself. I walked in.
We have a picture. Is that it?
Yeah.
Is that it?
I actually bought my own book.
Yeah, and you almost think like, that's me. Did you tell the guy or gal that you bought it from, like, this is my book?
I did not. I was embarrassed as could be, but what I actually wanted was that receipt that I could keep.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I remember. I've done stuff like that before, where you walk in. But I'm surprised you didn't say this is my book. But
next time,
because I'm sure you'll drive by another bookstore.
I'm sure I will.
Book Soup is a great one too. There's a lot of great small bookstores.
Yes, I love
here
the
in
independent
LA.
bookstores.
Yeah,
LA,
over on
New
Lawrencemont
York.
Boulevard. There's some. There's got the Book Soups. There's all kinds. So
yeah, but the shameless plug is all the normal bookstores: Amazon, Barnes and Noble,
Not
Audible,
shameless.
the whole thing.
Not shameless.
thing.
This is a great book to read, whether you have a kid or whether you don't. And you want to leave something behind for the people that you love in your life. From me to you, stories about life, love, family, faith, and how to negotiate a bigger allowance. Did she figure that one out? How to negotiate?
She did it big time.
She
big
did?
time. She's a much better negotiator than me.
Well, she learned it from the best, I'm going to say, and then she improved upon it. Thank you so much. And then before we leave, we're going to hear once again the music of Enzo De Palma. I'm Old Fashioned is the name of the song. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much for being here on Deborah Kobylt Live.
Thank you, Deborah.